Hey, I said move! Officer Bradley's voice cut through Mel's diner like a whip. He grabbed Terrence's shoulder, jerking him halfway out of the booth. The coffee cup flew, scalding liquid exploding across Terrence's crisp military uniform. Bradley's lip curled into a sneer. What's this costume supposed to be? Playing dress-up soldier? His thick finger flicked the purple heart ribbon dismissively. Probably bought it at some pawn shop. Rome's hands clenched into fists under the table. Every head in the diner turned. A grandmother gasped. A teenage girl raised her phone instinctively. Terrence's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed level. Officer, we're just having lunch. Not anymore. Bradley's hand moved to his cuffs. Time for you boys to learn some respect. The air crackled with humiliation and barely contained fury. Have you ever watched someone's entire world change in 10 minutes because they underestimated who they were really dealing with? The diner's atmosphere shifted like a storm front moving in. What had been casual Tuesday afternoon chatter became electric silence. Every patron suddenly found their food fascinating while stealing glances at the unfolding drama. Bradley stepped closer, his black boots squeaking against the checkered linoleum. Let me see some identification. Both of you. His tone carried the weight of assumed authority, each word clipped and demanding. Rome's thumb found the live stream button on his phone app. The screen flickered to life. Rome Speaks Truth going live. 3 viewers became 7, then 15. We haven't done anything wrong, Terrence said, his voice carrying the measured calm of someone accustomed to de-escalating volatile situations. His hands remained visible on the table, palms down, a gesture both peaceful and practiced. I'll be the judge of that. Bradley's radio crackled. He ignored it. Suspicious activity report came in about 2 males matching your description. Loitering. Intimidating customers. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. An elderly white couple 3 booths over shifted uncomfortably. They'd been there when the veterans arrived 30 minutes earlier, had watched them order politely, tip generously, and speak in respectful tones about Rome's daughter's upcoming graduation. Carol Martinez, the day manager, emerged from behind the counter. Her polyester uniform clung to her nervous frame as she approached. 40-something, with tired eyes and calloused hands, she'd worked food service for 2 decades. She knew trouble when she saw it, and she knew which side paid her bills. Officers, is there a problem? Her question carried no genuine inquiry, only the hollow performance of concern. Bradley straightened his shoulders. These individuals need to move along. This is a family establishment. Rome's live stream counter climbed. 47 viewers, 63-91. Comments began flooding the feed. What's happening? Call the news. This is harassment. Terrence reached slowly for his wallet, movements deliberate and visible. Here's my ID, officer. He extended his driver's license with steady fingers. Bradley snatched it roughly, studying the plastic card as if deciphering ancient hieroglyphs. Says here you live on Oakwood Drive. That's across town. What brings you to this neighborhood? Lunch. Terrence's answer was simple, unadorned. Smart mouth. Bradley's neck flushed red above his collar. You got a problem with authority? The question loaded with decades of systemic weight. Rome's camera caught every micro-expression, every shift in body language. Viewers could see Bradley's aggressive posture, the way he invaded personal space, how his hand kept drifting toward his weapon. No, sir. No problem at all. Terrence's military bearing never wavered. Shoulders square, spine straight, eyes forward. A notification buzzed on Terrence's phone. Then another. The screen lit up with message previews. Urgent. Senate hearing prep. Before he quickly turned it face down. But Bradley noticed. Expecting someone? Maybe your dealer? The accusation came with practiced cruelty. Rome's jaw tightened, but his recording hand remained steady. Years of Marine discipline held his anger in check. The viewer count hit 156, Someone in the comments had tagged local news stations. Carol wrung her hands, dish towel twisting between her fingers. Maybe it would be best if... Lady, this is police business. Bradley cut her off without looking away from his targets. These two are causing a disturbance. What disturbance? Terrence wondered. They'd ordered scrambled eggs and coffee. They'd discussed Rome's contracting business and Terrence's upcoming work trip to Washington. Their conversation had been quieter than the country music drifting from the kitchen radio. But he understood. This wasn't about noise levels or suspicious behavior. This was about power. About putting people in their place. About the uniform and the badge and the assumption that intimidation would work like it had 1,000 times before. Bradley turned to the other diners. Anyone here feel unsafe? Uncomfortable? His voice carried the weight of suggestion, the implicit promise that the right answer would make this end faster. An uncomfortable silence stretched. The grandmother with the floral dress stared at her untouched pie. The teenager kept recording surreptitiously. A construction worker in paint-stained jeans focused intensely on his burger. 8 minutes, Terrence said quietly. Bradley's head snapped back toward him. What did you say? You have 8 minutes to apologize and walk away. Terrence's voice carried no threat, no aggression. Just simple fact, delivered with the weight of absolute certainty. The officer's laugh was harsh, disbelieving. You threatening a police officer? Boy, you just bought yourself a world of trouble. Rome's viewer count passed 200. Comments flew past faster than anyone could read. Someone had shared the stream to Twitter. Another had posted the link in a Facebook group for military veterans. Terrence's phone buzzed again. Multiple notifications now, a steady stream of incoming messages. Each one marked priority or urgent. Each one ignored with practiced patience. 7 minutes, he said. Bradley's hand moved to his handcuffs. The metal clinked against his belt. Stand up, both of you. Hands where I can see them. The diner held its breath. Rome's camera captured every second, every gesture, every word. Somewhere in cyberspace, the video was being downloaded, shared, and preserved. Evidence accumulating in real time. But evidence of what? The viewers watching didn't know yet. They saw harassment, intimidation, the casual abuse of power that played out in diners and traffic stops and street corners across America daily. What they couldn't see was the briefcase beside Terrence's feet, the one with the Department of Defense seal barely visible under the table's edge. They couldn't see the encrypted messages piling up on his phone from colleagues in Washington. They couldn't see the credentials in Rome's wallet that would make Bradley's blood run cold. Not yet. The diner's front door chimed as a second police officer entered. Rodriguez was younger than Bradley, perhaps 30, with careful eyes that immediately assessed the scene. His gaze swept from the spilled coffee to the rigid postures, landing on Rome's phone still recording from the table. Bradley, what's the situation? Rodriguez's voice carried professional neutrality, but his stance suggested someone who'd walked into too many volatile scenes to rush to judgment. Disorderly conduct, possibly trespassing. Bradley's answers came quick and rehearsed. These two were asked to leave. They're refusing to comply. Rome's live stream counter climbed steadily. 298 viewers, 445, 612. The comments section had become a waterfall of outrage and support. Someone had tagged the local NAACP chapter. Another shared it to a veteran support group with 50,000 members. 6 minutes, Terrence said, checking his watch with the precision of someone accustomed to military timing. Rodriguez noticed the gesture. Something in Terrence's bearing, the ramrod posture, the controlled breathing, the way he kept his hands visible, triggered recognition. Military. Definitely military. Carol shifted nervously behind the counter, her phone pressed to her ear. Yes, sir, Mr. Harrison. There's a situation. Yes, sir, police are involved. No, sir, I don't think they were doing anything wrong, but... Through the kitchen service window, 3 staff members had their phones out. The cook, a burly man with tattoos covering both arms, held his device steady. The dishwasher, barely 18, live-streamed to his TikTok account. The teenage waitress typed furiously on Twitter. Bradley pulled out his handcuffs, the metal catching fluorescent light. "I'm done playing games. Stand up now." "Officers." Terrence's voice remained level, but something shifted in his tone. Deeper authority. Command presence. "I'm going to reach for my briefcase now. Slowly." "Don't move!" Bradley's hand flew to his weapon. "Easy, easy." Rodriguez stepped forward, palm raised toward his partner. His training kicked in. De-escalation, assessment, control. "Let's all stay calm." Rome's camera captured Bradley's hand hovering over his holster. Comments exploded. "He's going for his gun!" "Over lunch? This is insane." The viewer count hit 847. Someone with media credentials had joined the stream. Local news producers were getting notifications. The video was being downloaded to servers across 3 states. Terrence's briefcase sat beside his feet, black leather worn smooth from years of use. A corner of official letterhead peeked out from an unzipped pocket. Department of Defense seal partially visible to anyone looking closely enough. 5 minutes, Officer Bradley." The countdown landed like a physical blow. Bradley's face flushed deeper red. "You threatening me? You think some countdown is going to scare me?" "I'm giving you an opportunity." Terrence's words carried weight beyond their simplicity. Rodriguez studied the scene with growing unease. The veteran's calm control felt wrong for the situation. Most people facing police confrontation showed stress, rapid breathing, fidgeting, defensive postures. These two sat like men waiting for a meeting to start. "What's in the briefcase?" Rodriguez asked. "Work documents." Terrence's answer gave nothing away. Carol's phone conversation grew more animated. "Mr. Harrison, they're just sitting there. They haven't caused any problems. Yes, sir, I understand corporate policy, but—" "Yes, sir." She ended the call and approached with reluctant steps. "Gentlemen, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Corporate policy about police incidents." Bradley smirked with vindication. "You heard her. Time to go." Rome's viewer count passed 1,200. The comments section had become impossible to follow. Multiple people claimed they'd called local news stations. Someone posted a phone number for the ACLU. A user with a verified journalist badge was asking questions about location and context. Terrence's phone buzzed with increasing frequency. The lock screen showed message previews. "Committee postponement if needed." "Senator Williams asking for update. DOJ interest in incident." Each notification glimpsed and dismissed, but not before Bradley noticed the official-sounding fragments. 4 minutes. The elderly couple 3 booths over finally stood to leave, the woman clutching her purse tightly. They walked past without making eye contact, but the man slipped something to the teenage waitress, a business card and a whispered, "Get me that video." Through the window, passers-by had begun gathering. Rome's live stream wasn't the only recording anymore. Phone cameras pressed against glass from outside. Someone had set up a tripod across the street. Rodriguez keyed his radio. "Unit 247 requesting backup for crowd control. Growing number of civilians gathering at current location." "Backup?" Bradley laughed harshly. "For these two? Rodriguez, grow a spine." But Rodriguez had seen something Bradley missed. The tactical watch on Rome's wrist displaying encrypted message alerts. The way Terrence's eyes tracked every person in the diner, every exit, every potential threat. These weren't ordinary citizens caught up in harassment. These were operators. 3 minutes. Terrence's voice carried no emotion, but his phone screen lit up again. This time, the preview showed a contact name that made Rodriguez's blood freeze. "Senator J. Williams, urgent." The diner's atmosphere had transformed completely. What began as uncomfortable tension had become electric anticipation. Every patron sensed they were witnessing something significant, though most couldn't articulate what. Carol wrung her dish towel into a tight rope. The corporate call had been clear. Remove the problem. Avoid liability. Protect the franchise. But watching these two men's calm dignity against Bradley's escalating aggression made her stomach turn. "Maybe we should," she started. "Lady, stay out of police business." Bradley's patience had evaporated entirely. "You two, stand up now or I'll drag you out of here." Rome adjusted his phone's angle slightly, ensuring both officers remained in frame. His Marine training had taught him the value of documentation, but this felt different. More important, the viewer count hit 1,847. Multiple news outlets were requesting permission to use the footage. 2 minutes, Terrence said. Bradley's radio crackled. "Unit 156, be advised we're getting multiple calls about an incident at your location. Media inquiries coming in." The officer's confidence flickered for the first time. Media attention meant scrutiny. Scrutiny meant questions. Questions meant explanations he might not be able to provide. Rodriguez stepped closer to his partner. "Maybe we should reassess the situation." "Reassess what? These two think they're tough guys. Time to show them different." But Bradley's voice carried less certainty now. The countdown had rattled him. The constant phone notifications, the growing crowd outside, the way these two men sat like they held all the cards, none of it fit the script he'd expected to follow. Terrence's briefcase seemed to pulse with hidden significance. Rome's recording continued with documentary precision. And somewhere in cyberspace, the evidence mounted. Every word, every gesture, every abuse of power preserved in digital amber. 1 minute, Officer Bradley." The final countdown hit like a judge's gavel. Around the diner, phones held steady. Outside, the crowd pressed closer to windows. Online, thousands watched and waited for whatever was coming next. Bradley reached for his handcuffs with hands that shook slightly. "Time's up, smart guy." But Terrence smiled for the first time since the confrontation began. A quiet, knowing expression that suggested the real countdown had nothing to do with minutes. It had to do with the moment Bradley would realize exactly who he'd chosen to humiliate. The handcuffs clicked against Bradley's belt as he pulled them free. Metal gleamed under fluorescent lights, a symbol of authority about to be wielded. Around the diner, phones captured every angle. Rome's steady live stream, the cook's kitchen view, the teenager's TikTok feed, and a dozen civilian recordings from outside. "Time's up," Bradley announced, stepping forward with renewed confidence. The countdown had been nothing but empty posturing. These two would learn respect the hard way. Terrence looked at his watch one final time. 2:59 p.m. "Exactly. You're absolutely right, Officer Bradley. Time is up." His voice carried a subtle shift, less deferential, more authoritative. The change was subtle but unmistakable, like a frequency adjustment that suddenly brought a radio signal into crystal clarity. "Stand up, both of you. Hands behind your back." Bradley's commands came rapid fire now, the adrenaline of confrontation driving him forward. Instead of complying, Terrence reached slowly for his briefcase. His movements remained deliberate, controlled, but something fundamental had changed in his bearing. Military discipline remained, but now it served a different purpose. "I said don't move." Bradley's hand dropped to his weapon. "Easy, partner." Rodriguez's voice carried warning. Something was wrong with this picture. Civilians didn't maintain this kind of calm unless they held cards nobody else could see. Terrence's fingers found the briefcase clasp. The snap echoed through the silent diner like a gunshot. Inside, organized with military precision, lay documents, credentials, and the tools of an investigation that had been running far longer than anyone realized. The first item he withdrew was a leather wallet. Not a civilian wallet. This was government issue, thick and official, with the weight of federal authority. "Officer Bradley," Terrence said, standing slowly, "I need to inform you that you are currently participating in an active federal investigation into civil rights violations within your department." He opened the wallet, revealing a badge that caught the light like polished gold. The eagle and shield symbol was unmistakable. Department of Defense, Office of Inspector General. The diner fell into absolute silence. Even the country music from the kitchen radio seemed to fade into nothingness. Bradley's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, then a dawning horror as the implications crashed over him like ice water. That's fake. You're impersonating a federal officer. Special Agent Terrence Williams, DOD-IG. His voice now carried the full weight of federal authority. Badge number 7447. You can verify my credentials through the Federal Law Enforcement Communications Center. Would you like me to call them for you? Rome stood as well, reaching for his own wallet with the same careful precision. Staff Sergeant Jerome Thompson, Marine Corps Intelligence, currently assigned to the Inspector General's Civil Rights Investigation Unit. His badge caught the light, identical in its federal authority. 2 badges, 2 federal credentials. 2 men who had just documented every word, every gesture, every violation of civil rights law that had occurred in the past 10 minutes. Rodriguez stepped back involuntarily, his training screaming warnings. Federal investigators didn't just appear randomly. This was planned, orchestrated. The calm demeanor, the countdown, the willingness to be recorded. It all made terrible sense now. "This is impossible," Bradley whispered, his voice cracking. "We weren't notified of any federal investigation." Terrence pulled out an official document, Department of Defense letterhead clearly visible. Section 14141 of the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act gives us authority to investigate patterns of civil rights violations. We don't need local notification for undercover operations. The legal citation hit like a physical blow. Bradley's face drained of color as he recognized the federal statute that had ended careers and closed entire police departments. Rome's live stream had exploded to over 3,000 viewers. The comments section moved too fast to read, but key phrases flashed by. "Federal agents! Oh my God! Bradley is toast! Save this video!" Someone had already screen recorded the entire interaction. Carol Martinez stood frozen behind the counter, corporate policy manual forgotten in her hands. Federal investigation. The words hammered in her mind like a death sentence for her career. How do you explain to corporate that you tried to eject federal agents conducting an official investigation? The elderly man who'd slipped his business card to the waitress pushed through the crowd outside. James Miller, investigative reporter for Channel 7 News, had been following rumors of DOD civil rights investigations for months. His source network had finally paid off in spectacular fashion. Terrence pulled out a tablet from his briefcase, the screen showing official DOD documentation. This investigation began 6 months ago, following pattern recognition analysis of civil rights complaints. Your precinct showed statistical anomalies that triggered federal oversight. Numbers scrolled across the tablet screen in damning detail. Bradley's precinct, 340% higher complaint rate than state average, 23 pending civil rights lawsuits, 14 documented violations of federal civil rights law, 1 short of automatic Department of Justice intervention. Today's incident makes 15, Rome added quietly, his camera still recording with documentary precision. Congratulations, officer. You just triggered federal oversight of your entire department. The implications rippled outward like shockwaves. Federal oversight meant consent decrees, external monitoring, complete restructuring of department policies. Careers would end. Budgets would be slashed. The entire power structure Bradley represented was about to crumble. Bradley's radio crackled with increasing urgency. Unit 156, please respond. We have multiple media requests and direct calls from the mayor's office. He turned the volume down with shaking fingers. Rodriguez keyed his own radio carefully. Unit 247 to dispatch. Request immediate contact with Chief Morrison. Federal agents on scene. Repeat. Federal agents involved in current incident. His voice carried the careful neutrality of someone trying to distance himself from impending disaster. The response came immediately. dispatcher's voice tight with barely controlled panic. All units be advised. Do not take any action regarding incident at Mel's Diner without direct authorization from Chief Morrison. Repeat, no action without Chief's authorization. Too late for that guidance. The action had already been taken, recorded, and transmitted to thousands of viewers. Terrence's phone buzzed with an incoming call. The screen showed Senator J. Williams in large letters, visible to everyone nearby. The timing felt orchestrated, deliberate, another piece of evidence that this entire encounter had been planned from the beginning. "Excuse me, officer. I need to take this," he answered with professional courtesy. "Senator Williams, this is Agent Williams." "Yes, ma'am. The investigation is proceeding as planned. The incident has been documented thoroughly. Yes, ma'am, I'll have the preliminary report ready for tomorrow's Judiciary Committee hearing." Bradley's knees nearly buckled. Senate Judiciary Committee. Tomorrow. This wasn't just about his job anymore. This was about congressional hearings, federal legislation, systemic change that would ripple through law enforcement nationwide. "Your sister?" Rome asked with carefully controlled amusement. "Committee chairwoman," Terrence confirmed, ending the call. "She's been very interested in our findings, particularly the patterns of harassment targeting military veterans." The crowd outside had grown to over 50 people. News vans were arriving with satellite dishes extending toward the sky. Channel 7, Channel 12, CNN affiliate. Social media had amplified the live stream beyond local interest. This was becoming national news in real time. Rome's viewer count hit 5,247 and climbing. Someone had posted the stream link to Reddit's r/public freakout, where it was rapidly climbing toward the front page. Twitter hashtags were forming organically. #Diner Incident, #Federal Sting, #Civil Rights Now, #Veterans Rights. Bradley's supervisor, Sergeant Martinez, burst through the diner door with 2 additional officers. His face showed the strain of a man whose career was imploding by the minute, whose department was about to become a case study in federal intervention. "Agent Williams," Martinez approached with the careful deference due to federal authority. "I'm Sergeant Martinez, Officer Bradley's supervisor. I need to understand the nature and scope of this investigation." Terrence handed him a business card and official documentation. 6-month undercover civil rights investigation under Federal Statute 42 U.S.C. 14141. Today's incident provides documentary evidence of systematic violations. Your department will receive formal notification within the hour. Martinez read the documentation with growing horror. Federal civil rights investigation, congressional oversight, media attention. Every police administrator's nightmare scenario unfolding in real time. "Jesus Christ, Bradley," Martinez whispered, the words barely audible. "What the hell did you do?" What he'd done was simple. Treated 2 black men eating lunch like criminals. Applied presumptions of guilt based on race. Used his badge to intimidate and threaten. Demanded compliance without legal justification. The same pattern that had been documented 14 times before in similar incidents across the precinct. Except this time, he'd chosen the wrong targets. Carol's corporate phone rang with shrill insistence. The caller ID showed Regional Manager Urgent. She let it ring, knowing that conversation would end her employment and possibly expose the entire franchise to federal liability. "Officer Bradley," Terrence said, returning his credentials to the briefcase with methodical precision. "You have the right to remain silent during this federal investigation. I strongly recommend you exercise that right until you've consulted with legal counsel." The irony wasn't lost on anyone present. Miranda warnings, delivered by the victim of harassment to the officer who'd tried to arrest him without cause. Rome saved his live stream footage to multiple cloud servers, ensuring the evidence could never be lost, destroyed, or suppressed. Somewhere in Washington, DoD servers were automatically backing up every frame, every word, every gesture that would soon appear in congressional testimony. Bradley stood in the wreckage of his assumptions, surrounded by the electronic eyes that had recorded his downfall. Federal agents, Senate committees, national news coverage, a simple lunch that had become the catalyst for systemic change he couldn't comprehend. "The investigation continues," Terrence announced to the growing crowd of officers, media, and civilians pressing against the windows. "What happens next depends on how your department chooses to respond to federal oversight and constitutional compliance requirements." But everyone present understood the truth. What happened next had been set in motion the moment Bradley decided that two black veterans didn't belong in his diner. The wheels of federal justice, once turning, were impossible to stop. The real countdown hadn't been 10 minutes. It had been 6 months of careful investigation, leading to this perfectly documented moment of reckoning. The diner had transformed into a war room. Federal agents on one side, local law enforcement scrambling on the other, and media crews setting up outside like vultures circling fresh carnage. Terrence opened his tablet, revealing data that would dismantle careers with mathematical precision. "Let's discuss numbers, shall we?" His voice carried the calm authority of someone presenting evidence to a grand jury. "Your department receives $2.3 million annually in federal community policing grants. Those funds are contingent on civil rights compliance." Bradley's radio squawked with desperate urgency. Chief Morrison's voice crackled through. "Bradley, do not say another word. Legal counsel en route. Maintain silence until representation arrives." Too late. Everything had already been said, recorded, and transmitted to servers beyond local reach. Rome's live stream count hit 8,743 viewers. The comments section had become a digital courtroom where thousands rendered instant verdicts. "Justice served" was trending nationally. Cable news producers were calling their contacts, demanding background on the story breaking in real time. Sergeant Martinez studied the federal documentation with the expression of a man reading his own obituary. "Agent Williams, what specific violations are we discussing here?" Terrence's tablet displayed a comprehensive spreadsheet. 47 documented incidents of disparate treatment based on race over the past 18 months. Your precinct shows statistical anomalies that triggered algorithmic flags in our pattern recognition software. The numbers painted a devastating picture. Traffic stops, 340% higher rate for black drivers. Use of force incidents, 280% above state average for minority encounters. Complaint resolution, 12% sustain rate compared to 67% state average. "This is Bradley's beat specifically," Martinez said, desperation creeping into his voice. "Officer Bradley represents a systemic problem, not an isolated incident." Rome's camera captured Martinez's attempt to scapegoat his subordinate. "The data shows supervisory knowledge and tacit approval of these patterns." Carol's corporate phone had been ringing non-stop. She finally answered with trembling fingers. "Mel's Diner, this is Carol." "Yes, Mr. Harrison, I understand. Federal agents." "No, sir, they were customers first." "Yes, sir, I asked them to leave." "No, sir, I didn't know." Her conversation provided real-time evidence of corporate liability. Every word was being recorded by multiple devices, creating a legal paper trail that would survive any attempt at damage control. Terrence pulled up another screen showing federal oversight statistics. 15 documented civil rights violations triggers automatic Department of Justice intervention under the consent decree process. Today's incident crossed that threshold. The implications hit like a freight train. Consent decrees meant federal control of local policing, external monitors, court-ordered reforms, budget oversight, the complete dismantling of local authority. Bradley's hands shook as reality crystallized. "This is entrapment. You set me up." "We documented your behavior," Rome corrected. "You chose every word, every action, every violation of our constitutional rights. We simply provided the opportunity for you to reveal your true character." Martinez's radio erupted with activity. "All supervisors report to headquarters immediately. Media blackout in effect. No statements without legal approval." The department was in full crisis mode. Outside, the crowd had swelled to over 100 people. News trucks lined the street like a military convoy. Satellite dishes reached toward the sky, transmitting the story nationwide. Local activists had arrived with signs and bullhorns. Veterans organizations were mobilizing. Terrence's phone displayed incoming calls from Washington. Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, Congressional Oversight Committees, Pentagon Legal Affairs. Each missed call represented escalating federal interest in the case. The financial impact extends beyond grant funding, Terrence continued, scrolling through liability calculations. Civil rights lawsuits carry mandatory attorney fee awards. Your city's insurance carrier will reassess coverage rates based on federal findings. Numbers scrolled past. $4.7 million in potential civil lawsuit exposure. $12.3 million in federal grant funding at risk. Insurance premium increases projected at 340% based on federal consent decree designation. Rome's viewer count climbed past 12,000. Someone had shared the stream to YouTube, where it was gaining momentum on trending lists. Twitter engagement showed exponential growth. Facebook groups for veterans and civil rights were amplifying the signal. Carol ended her corporate call with tears in her eyes. "I'm fired. Effective immediately. Corporate says the franchise is under federal investigation now." Her employment casualty provided immediate consequences, but Terrence felt no satisfaction. Individual punishment wasn't the goal. Systemic change was. A black sedan pulled up outside, federal plates clearly visible. Two figures in dark suits emerged. Department of Justice attorneys dispatched from the regional office. Their arrival elevated the incident from local harassment to federal case study. Agent Williams. The lead attorney introduced herself through the crowd. Assistant U.S. Attorney Sarah Miller, Civil Rights Division. We've been monitoring the situation. Bradley watched federal reinforcements arrive with growing horror. This wasn't just about his job anymore. This was about federal prosecution, criminal charges, the complete destruction of everything he'd built over 15 years in law enforcement. Martinez keyed his radio with desperate urgency. "Chief Morrison, we need immediate legal representation. Federal prosecutors on scene. Situation escalating beyond department control." The response was immediate. "All units maintain radio silence. No further communication on this incident." But silence wouldn't help now. The evidence existed in digital permanence across multiple platforms. Screenshots, downloads, cloud backups. The story had taken on a life beyond official control. Terrence's tablet showed real-time social media analytics. The incident was being discussed in 14 languages across 6 continents. International human rights organizations were taking notice. This small diner confrontation had become a global symbol. The Department of Justice will be filing federal civil rights charges within 72 hours, Attorney Miller announced. This incident, combined with the established pattern of violations, meets the threshold for criminal prosecution. Criminal charges. The words hit Bradley like physical blows. Not just job loss, potential federal prison time, felony convictions, the complete destruction of his future. Rome's tactical watch displayed encrypted messages from marine intelligence networks. Other investigations were connecting to this incident. Federal agencies were sharing information, building comprehensive cases against systematic civil rights violations. "Your department has 3 options," Terrence announced with prosecutorial clarity. "Accept federal oversight voluntarily, face mandatory consent decree through court order, or risk complete dissolution and federal takeover of local law enforcement." The ultimatum landed with devastating finality. Local control versus federal intervention. Voluntary compliance versus court-ordered submission. Reform versus replacement. Martinez's phone buzzed with text messages from fellow supervisors. "Meeting with mayor canceled. City attorney requesting all personnel files. Insurance company demanding immediate documentation." The institutional panic was spreading outward like ripples from a stone dropped in still water. Police department, city government, insurance carriers, corporate franchises. Everyone touched by Bradley's actions was scrambling for damage control. Outside, the crowd had organized into a peaceful demonstration. Veterans in uniform stood at attention. Civil rights activists held signs demanding justice. Local residents who'd witnessed years of harassment finally had a voice. Rome's live stream had become a focal point for national conversation about police accountability. Comments flooded in from across the country, stories of similar harassment, expressions of support, demands for systemic change. The Senate Judiciary Committee hearing tomorrow will feature this incident as Exhibit A in federal civil rights legislation, Terrence revealed. Your actions, Officer Bradley, will influence national policy for decades. From harassment in a diner to congressional testimony in 24 hours. The speed of modern justice, amplified by social media and federal oversight, had compressed traditional timelines into digital immediacy. Bradley's career was ending not with resignation or retirement, but as evidence in a federal case that would reshape law enforcement nationwide. His name would appear in legal textbooks, congressional records, and civil rights training materials. Attorney Miller approached with official documentation. Officer Bradley, you'll be receiving formal notification of federal civil rights charges. I recommend immediate legal representation specializing in federal criminal defense. The federal machinery was in motion now, unstoppable and comprehensive. Grand jury subpoenas would follow. Congressional hearings would amplify the evidence. Legal precedents would be established. Rome saved the final live stream segments to multiple secure servers. Somewhere in Washington, federal prosecutors were already building cases based on this documented evidence. The wheels of justice, once turning, would reshape entire systems. This is how change happens, Terrence said quietly, packing his briefcase with methodical precision. Not through violence or revenge, but through documentation, legal process, and the patient application of constitutional principles. The corporate showdown was complete. Federal authority had triumphed over local abuse. The price for Bradley's 10 minutes of harassment would be measured in years of federal oversight and millions of dollars in systemic reform. Justice, served with mathematical precision and legal inevitability. 6 weeks later, the diner looked identical but felt completely different. New management, federal oversight protocols, and a community transformed by accountability. The changes rippled outward like concentric circles from a stone dropped in still water. Officer Bradley's suspension had become permanent termination within 48 hours of the incident. Federal criminal charges followed: deprivation of rights under color of law, conspiracy to violate civil rights, official misconduct. His trial date was set for spring, with Rome's live stream footage serving as primary evidence. Rodriguez faced administrative discipline but kept his job after cooperating fully with federal investigators. His testimony revealed departmental patterns that supported broader reforms. Sometimes, survival meant choosing the right side of history. Carol Martinez's firing had sparked corporate policy changes across the entire franchise network. Respect and service protocol became mandatory training for all employees. Zero tolerance for discrimination wasn't just policy anymore. It was federally monitored compliance. The most dramatic change came through technology. The Citizen Voice mobile app launched citywide, allowing real-time reporting of police interactions directly to federal monitors. Every complaint triggered automatic review, creating transparency that traditional systems had avoided. Within 6 weeks, the app recorded 247 interactions. 93% were rated positive, a dramatic improvement from previous complaint ratios. Officers, knowing they were being monitored, had modified behavior across the entire force. Federal oversight brought swift policy transformation. Body cameras became mandatory for all police interactions, not just traffic stops. The footage was uploaded automatically to federal servers, preventing local tampering or deletion. Monthly bias training replaced annual seminars. Real scenarios based on documented cases, including Bradley's diner incident, forced officers to confront their assumptions. The training wasn't theoretical anymore. It was personal, immediate, and federally mandated. Community oversight boards gained actual authority beyond advisory roles. Veteran representation became mandatory, acknowledging the unique perspective of those who'd served their country only to face harassment at home. The financial impact was measured in millions. Bradley's department lost $2.3 million in federal grant funding pending compliance reviews. Insurance premiums increased 340% due to federal oversight designation. Budget reallocations prioritized community programs over aggressive enforcement. But the changes extended beyond policy. Terrence's sister, Senator Williams, introduced the Veterans Civil Rights Protection Act in Congress. The legislation, directly inspired by the diner incident, passed with bipartisan support within 4 months. The law created federal protections specifically for military veterans facing discrimination, with enhanced penalties for violations occurring in public accommodations. Bradley's 10 minutes of harassment had generated permanent legal protections for millions of veterans nationwide. Rome's live stream footage became evidence in federal training curricula. Police academies across 12 states now showed the incident as an example of how not to conduct public interactions. His steady documentation had created educational impact beyond the original incident. The diner itself became an unlikely symbol. A small plaque near the entrance commemorated the incident. On this site, federal civil rights protections were strengthened through the courage of those who documented injustice. Tourists occasionally stopped for photos. New management hired deliberately diverse staff and implemented customer service training emphasizing dignity for all patrons. The changes weren't just cosmetic, they reflected genuine cultural transformation under federal scrutiny. Data showed measurable improvement across all metrics. Police complaint rates dropped 67% citywide. Use of force incidents declined 45% in minority communities. Federal monitors reported substantial progress toward constitutional compliance. Other police departments took notice. 15 cities voluntarily adopted similar oversight protocols rather than risk federal intervention. The Williams Protocol became shorthand for proactive civil rights compliance in law enforcement circles. Bradley's trial proceeded as scheduled. Federal prosecutors used Rome's complete footage, Terrence's investigation documents, and testimony from multiple witnesses. The evidence was overwhelming, the verdict inevitable. He received 18 months in federal prison plus 3 years supervised release. The conviction carried lifetime employment restrictions in law enforcement. His pension was forfeited under federal civil rights violation statutes. The sentence provided individual accountability, but the systemic changes mattered more. Federal oversight had transformed an entire department's culture, creating lasting protection for future interactions. Terrence continued his DOD investigation work, but the diner incident had made him a reluctant symbol of patient resistance to injustice. Speaking engagements at police academies and civil rights conferences filled his calendar. Rome returned to his contracting business but remained active in veteran advocacy. His documentation skills had proven that ordinary citizens could create extraordinary accountability through careful evidence gathering. 6 months after the incident, federal monitors reported substantial compliance improvements. The consent decree remained in effect, but progress indicators suggested eventual transition to local control under continued oversight. The revolution hadn't required violence or destruction. It had required patience, preparation, and the willingness to document injustice with unflinching clarity. Change came through legal channels, federal oversight, and the power of evidence properly preserved. Justice served with institutional permanence rather than individual revenge. The price of 10 minutes of harassment, years of federal reform, and millions of dollars in systemic change. 2 years later, the transformation was complete. The Williams effect had spread beyond one city, beyond one department, beyond one incident in a small diner. Real-life stories like this one prove that individual courage can create systemic change. Terrence Williams now served as the Department of Defense's lead consultant on civilian military civil rights protection. His work influenced policy in 47 states, creating federal protections that didn't exist before that Tuesday afternoon in Mel's Diner. Rome Thompson's documentation techniques became standard training for civil rights organizations nationwide. His live stream footage was archived in the Smithsonian's Civil Rights Collection, a permanent record of how ordinary citizens could create extraordinary accountability. The diner incident had generated congressional legislation, federal oversight reforms, and legal precedents protecting millions of Americans. These touching stories demonstrate how documented injustice can become the foundation for lasting change. Bradley's conviction stood as federal precedent. His 18-month sentence served as warning to law enforcement officers nationwide. Civil rights violations carry real consequences. The Bradley Standard became shorthand for federal prosecution of discriminatory policing. But individual punishment was never the goal. Systemic reform was. The federal oversight triggered by 15 documented violations had transformed an entire department's culture, creating protection for future generations. The mobile app launched from this incident now operated in 127 cities nationwide. Real-time reporting had revolutionized police accountability, giving citizens immediate access to federal oversight. Technology had democratized civil rights protection. These black stories matter because they show how patience and preparation can triumph over prejudice. The most powerful weapon against injustice wasn't anger. It was evidence. Not revenge, but reform. Not silence, but documented truth shared with the world. Veteran organizations across America now trained members in legal documentation techniques. Rome's methods had empowered thousands to protect themselves and their communities through careful evidence gathering. The Senate Judiciary Committee's final report credited the diner incident with spurring the most comprehensive civil rights reforms in decades. One confrontation had influenced national policy, federal legislation, and constitutional protections for millions. Life stories like these remind us that heroes aren't born in moments of violence. They're made in moments of choice. The choice to remain calm, to document injustice, and to trust that legal systems can work when provided with undeniable evidence. Your voice matters in this ongoing struggle for equality and justice. Your story matters. Your evidence matters. Every interaction you witness, every injustice you document, every moment you choose courage over silence contributes to the larger narrative of social change. Share your experiences in the comments below. If you've witnessed discrimination, harassment, or abuse of authority, tell your story. Document it safely. Share it responsibly. Your evidence could be the catalyst for the next wave of reform. Subscribe to Black Voices Uncut and help us amplify the stories that create real change. Together, we're not just recording history, we're rewriting it. One documented truth at a time. Remember, the most powerful weapon against injustice is your voice, preserved in digital permanence and shared with the world. Make it count.